All right, everyone. My name is Jane Friedman, and I'm here today with author Martha Woodroof. Thank you for joining us here in Zoom, or you might be watching on Facebook. For those of you joining here on Zoom, I just want to point out a couple of ways that you can interact with me, Martha, and we've also got my husband, Mark, on the session. There's a chat. You can use the chat to talk with each other. I'm not going to be keeping a close eye on the chat, although Mark might take a peek. The Q&A box is a great place to go and ask questions that you would like me to pose to Martha. And then for those of you on Facebook, I will be taking a look at the comments there to pick up any questions if time allows. We'll see how things go. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with me if you've been joining these Sunday sermons, as I call them, over the summer. This is the first Sunday sermon where I've had a guest, Martha, who has been my friend practically since I moved to Charlottesville around 2012. She interviewed me for her radio show, The Spark, at WMRA in Harrisonburg. And after that interview, we stayed in touch, we kept having lunches, and then full disclosure, about a year ago, I asked her to officiate my wedding to Mark. So we have a history together that is very special to me. So one of the reasons I've asked Martha to today's session is because one of the biggest anxieties I encounter with writers is that they're worried that it's too late to write and publish. And often it's because of age. What's that?
Phooey.
Phooey, exactly. That's why you're here. Now, I hear concerns about age from folks who are both young and old. Like the young people feel like they won't be taken seriously. Older people feel a lot the same way, but there's also this added anxiety that time is running out. They're also afraid of ageism. In any event, I've invited Martha because she published her first novel at the age of 67. And I also felt comfortable talking with you, Martha, about this issue because I don't think you consider this issue to be impolite. like you're willing to talk about anything.
Absolutely. I was going to say you should introduce me as your elderly author. Elderly author, Martha Woodroof. Elderly is cool.
Elderly is cool. All right. I was reading some interviews you've given. This was at the time that your novel released. This was in 2014. So it's been a few years since the novel came out. And I think you said in one of those interviews that you loved aging. Why?
Well, I think of myself, it's funny, I'm just writing about this now. And I think of where I am now as a product of who I started out with, worked on by how I've come through what's happened to me. And that process of learning from experience, I am a lot more comfortable being who I am and looking at the world as it actually is, without editing it or tweaking it or saying, next week when I've lost 10 pounds or gained 10 pounds, my life will be perfect. I look at life as my adventure, and I'm the only one who gets to live it and bring it on. And that includes aging. It's part of the theater of life.
So, well, I want to come back to that idea a little later. Maybe do some of the writing focused stuff first, and I think it's important for the people watching to know that, at least I don't think, you're not someone who's been writing novels since you were like in your 20s. Like you've had a very eclectic career. I think you've called yourself a job gypsy. So tell us a little bit about all of the things that you've done.
Well, I started out, where did I start out? I I ran away from my boarding school and Seven Sisters background on the bus to Houston, Texas when I was 19 because I wanted to live, not study living. And in Houston, I did a lot of theater and um, was pretty serious about it for a while. And we're not here to talk about theater, so I won't tell you funny stories. But I came to Charlottesville with my first husband, who was a graduate student at UVA in Charlottesville. The jobs that mattered. My first job I had in Charlottesville, I was a hippie. I could weave and throw pots. So I was a psychiatric occupational therapy aide on the old UVA inpatient ward. And that was such an education and exposure to human nature, the spectrum of human experience and how people react to it. I was really good with schizophrenics. I seemed to calm them and make them feel safe, and I liked that. I had good conversations. After that, I left my first husband, hooked up with my second husband, who had dropped out of law school and didn't have a clue what he wanted to do with his life, except he liked restaurants because you just showed up. And it wasn't complicated. So we opened a couple of restaurants in Charlottesville. That too, I found a great education in human nature. Because a good restaurant is not just about feeding people, it's about nurturing people, about making people feel noticed and cared about. Because food is is it a complex relationship? Right back to the womb, probably, feeling loved and cared for and noticed. That's so important. Well, after that, I left my second husband and I got into television in Charlottesville on a dare from my second ex-husband. Stop me if I go on too long, too much detail. Give me the old, but anyway, my second ex-husband, they needed a new talk show host, and the news director was in the restaurant whining about how they couldn't find anybody, and I said, I could do that. My second ex-husband said, you can't pull that off. You don't have any experience. Well, I auditioned the next day and I got the job. But television, you have to have a hairdo and you show up. What I love people's stories. That's what I liked about the Davis Award. That's what I liked about restaurants, hearing people's stories. And when you hear people's stories on television, it's you, it's a couple of camera people, it's a producer, there's a bunch of lights, and you are that person they see on television. So you're a persona, and it's you have to get past that to get anything real. And by then it was a live show, the show's over. I was doing a season in summer stock, and there was a big commercial radio station nearby. And I went to them because I used to do a lot of arts stuff on my television and said, you need to have a feature, a radio feature where you highlight arts, talk about artists and what's going on. And they said, we don't have anybody, you do it. So they gave me, I'm not exaggerating, they gave me a recorder and a microphone and sent me up in an ultralight. My first radio feature, you hear a tremendous amount of engine noise because I had no idea how to manage a radio. And some people vaguely shouting in the background. But I loved radio. It's portable. And it's so unintimidating. You put your recorder down, you turn it on, you tell people it's on, and then you just talk. So I happened to bump into, this is back in the 80s, I happened to bump into old NPR reporter Wendy Kaufman at a Charlottesville party. And she said, we got to talking about storytelling radio through sound. And she said, come work for us. So I elbowed my way into NPR and talked to Jay Curtis, who's the god of radio back there. He's now a CBS This Morning producer. Jay listened to an interview I brought and said, you're a brilliant interviewer, but you don't know anything technically about radio. Go away and learn it and then come back. And this, I think, is relevant about what we're here to talk about, which is being cautious, which is feeling like it's too late, or, you know, who would want me? I could have taken that. I could have heard the go away. But what I heard is go away and come back.
Mm-hmm.
And this is everything I've done, I've learned by doing. It's just how I roll. And I learned storytelling through sound by doing it in all different kinds of situations. Probably my favorite was when I drove a pickup truck with a camper and I just roar around, you know, with my head hanging out looking for stories and then sleep in the back. So that was fun. But anyway, I'm also a long-term recovering alcoholic, which I'm not shy about at all. And this dysfunctional habit landed Miss Prissy Pratt here in the Amherst County Jail for a night. And, you know, I'll never forget, a jail cell is a cage. And I was sitting on a concrete bench. There were no sheets. There was nothing. It was a cage. And, you know, it's what happens if you're drunk and you're able to get sober. You sort of have a bottom, an epiphany. My epiphany was that I was in that cell because of my own behavior. And my dysfunctional behavior was attached to my alcohol consumption and pill popping. If I didn't cut it out, I'd be back. And
so how old were you when that happened?
Oh, I was 43, 44. I was up there. I had a short, chaotic alcoholic career, you know, fueled by various other, you know, we're complex human beings, including our screw ups. But anyway, after that, I had I had no money. I was dreaming of zooming up to a net worth of zero. But I ended up getting a job as the night cook in an artist colony, because it came with a place to live, which was a very lightly converted chicken coop, because the artist colony was on an old plantation. So I said, okay, here I am. And Mr. Wonderful, with whom I've lived for 30 years, was working on the grounds crew there, and he was as screwed up as I was. And we met through our healths, and it was the healthy parts of us that interested us. So professionally, I went to work at a college and they created a job for me as a low-level administrator, which is odd considering I have no bachelor's degree and talked my way into grad school at UVA and dropped out of that. But everything I did involved change. I should say, during this time, I had begun writing novels. Just I liked storytelling.
Yeah, that's something I noticed. You mentioned, you know, your rock bottom was in your 40s, and I think that's when you started writing fiction, is it not?
No, I had actually started before, and
Okay.
I'd actually had a wonderful agent who showed my first novel around and wasn't able to sell it. It was Carl Brandt, who was part of Brandt and Hockman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad now because I'm a better writer. I hadn't hit my hit my speed. I learn by doing, and it takes a while sometimes. I'm a splat writer. So I revise and revise and revise until I get this ping saying, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
So
Yeah.
how many novels would you say you wrote
Oh, I probably
before?
four, maybe four.
Mhm.
And they were, um, and I enjoyed every one of them. It was sort of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't a hobbyist. My idea is to identify what I enjoy being and doing and push myself to get better at it.
So what does hobbyist mean to you? That you were just kind of not taking it
That,
seriously?
yeah, well, that I would be writing. I wasn't journaling.
Mm.
I wasn't writing to think, well, I'll just put this in a drawer.
Mm.
I was writing to see how good I could get, and to me, you measure how and good is not the right thing, because there are you can be a wonderful writer and just not hit the right chemistry of events and people and end up published. But I wanted to get good enough to be taken seriously as a writer
Mhm.
by people who know what they're who know about it.
Mhm. So that brings us to the book, the first novel that you published. I'll hold it up
Yes.
here. Small Blessings.
Oh, look at that. Hi, Brooke.
Now, I believe initially you said you wrote this and put it in a box and put it in a closet.
Yeah, well, I wrote it. I sent it to my then agent. I had published a nonfiction book, and my agent, whom I still am buddies with, she doesn't like my fiction.
Mm.
So I sent it to her, and she said no. So I thought, okay, and yeah, and it went into the unpublished novel file.
So what made you bring it back out?
Well, I had started. I also love to write essays, and I had identified couple of um, a couple of outlets where I wanted to place. And it really is, it's a little bit like auditioning for that television talk show. Figure I want to try something, and I try it. And I had actually formed a really nice relationship with the old editor of the old iteration of the Lives column in the New York Times Magazine. And this is another thing. I sent him a couple of my essays. First of all, I found out who he was, and I didn't send it in through the submission thingy.
Mm.
Sent it to him, and
That's pretty bold.
oh, honey, why not? I'm not pushy, and I believe in saying I believe in tagging initial queries with something loose that doesn't make me a supplicant or timid, but it says this is a tough old bird whom you can work with,
Mm.
and I think of myself as not as a supplicant, but as a colleague, and that I think it got me a lot of work with NPR because I don't have a lot of ego. I like working with editors,
Mhm.
and my loyalties to the story. So anyway, editor and the New York Times editor and he worked with me, and I got a couple of pieces placed with that. So I'd had that success. I'd also worked with a couple of, I was a sort of, I had a wonderful position. I got to live in my cow pasture, and I but I got assignments from the NPR Culture Desk, and that's, I don't know anybody else who did that, and I'm not quite sure why I did. There again, I think it's because I'm cheerful, and I'm good, but there's lots of good people. And those editors, good writing for me is pretty simple. It's a matter of figuring out exactly what I want to say and the simplest, most direct way of saying it, of saying exactly what I want to say, not coming close to it. It's the hard thinking, I think, that I really enjoy. Plus, I love language. I love the power of language. So I had some good creds. I could I could tag emails with frequent NPR freelancer wants this,
Yes.
blah blah blah, and let's not be silly. That helps, but you also have to do it.
Mhm.
You have to, and Charlie, my husband's always fixing me with his beady little eyes and saying, Martha, everybody isn't like you. And I recognize that. And I've forgotten what you asked me. Have I answered it yet?
I've forgotten too, but that's okay. I actually thought I might have Mark ask the next question because we were talking this morning about, because I can't tell you how many clients I have who they're 50s, 60s, 70s, even older. They're working on their first book and they have a lot of anxiety about whether or not they should even keep trying, anxiety about submitting, anxiety about ageism. And I asked Mark as a hypothetical, he's interested in musicians and how musicians succeed in their body of work over time. I said, if you saw an artist, a musician come out with their first album at 67, what would you think? And so I'll let him take it from here. I'll let him answer and then ask you the question.
Yeah, when Jane asked me that, I think my reply was, if somebody was releasing their first kind of major artistic statement at that age, I would kind of assume that they had probably put a lot of anxiety behind them at that point, or that by that point in your life, I would think that, I mean, you know who you are, you've been through a lot, and you're able to distill what's really important into something I would expect to be elegantly concise, I suppose. Uh, but what was the question?
Well, I guess do
You
you
guys are soaking me up. Longer.
I think mainly do you think I get the feeling that you're not trying to impress anyone
No,
with your books. But
no.
I do get that feeling from a lot, especially younger clients that I work with. No, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it can get in the way of a good
Impressed how?
story. Look at how good of a writer I am, or look how smart I am, or look at,
Yes. Well, I I have I have several friends. One in particular who's a graduate of IO Writers, which is as good a writing program as you're going to get. And we have great arguments about knockdown, drag out arguments about lyrical writing, which I consider writing. It's not based in story, it's based in the sound of the writing. And I am, it is about the author rather than, for me, it's the author showing off rather than telling a story. And I am obviously I'm a journalist. I'm of the storytelling camp. And but no matter which way you roll, I would not sure why I keep saying which way I roll. I don't think I've ever said that before in my life. But I think the point is, I wrote to, I wrote as I want to write. And I don't have any critical voice in my head that stands over me and argues with me about this is what you should be doing. I don't believe in that.
So did you have that voice earlier in your life and you got rid of it, or how is it that you have become that that's like everyone wants that?
Um, well, part of it is that I crashed and burned a lot. And I think there are benefits to that. You know, I have a highly developed inner yeehaw. But I think it's a decision that you can make. Do I want to go through life? It's pretty simple. Worrying about other people, how other people perceive me, or do I just want to go through life as who I am? And that for me involves my writing. You know, and that it's tricky because, like, when I was working with the New York Times, and I had a long-term ongoing column with the Washington Post, of course you're working with editors, and when you're working with an editor, you're both trying to get the best piece or the best story or the best book that you can. But I'm the one who starts the story, and I'm the one who does the writing. And it's not ego. It's about going back to that thing about what exactly do I want to say, and what is the best language, the most best specific language to say it. And I think if you want to show off, then you are stuck in the people pleasing mode, and that is a for me a kind of a dead end. You know, it's a snake eating its tail.
Yeah. When you were going through the process of getting Small Blessings published,
Uh-huh.
whether that was dealing with the agents or the editors or anyone else that was involved in that, did you sense any ageism or any issues with your age going through that?
No, in fact, do you want me to briefly tell the story if I had to switch agents?
Yeah.
And it started, the whole, my coming out with this novel started with an actual bucket list. I was like 65, and I thought, well, I've had a lot of fun, but what haven't I done that I'd like to pull off? and I thought, I haven't published a novel, and I want to try to do that, you know, make a series, not writing it, publishing it. So I knew that my current agent, so anyway, a friend loaned me a book called Major Pettigrew's Last Stand. I read it and I loved it, and I found out who edited it, and I sent her a note saying, frequent NPR freelancer Pettigrew. And then inside the note, I said, it reminds me of a novel I just finished, and I included the first 10 pages of Small Blessings. And she emailed me back that afternoon, so it does happen, and said, send me the rest. I sent her the rest. She sent it to another editor at Random House, who said, I love this is not for me, but it's ready to go out. Have your agent send it out. And I emailed back, my agent hates my fiction. And she emailed me back a list of, I think, 10 agents. And in the meantime, I had decided that Small Blessings needed a pretty drastic revision. And I sent out some queries and got some interest, but I sort of stalled. And while I revised and added a plot point that I think helped really make it pop. And I got so fond of these people. I missed them when I finished the book. But anyway, my eventual agent was on maternity leave. So she emailed me and said, I'm sure you have representation, but I loved what you sent. Can you, whatever. And I didn't have representation. So we ended up together. And it was a wild and glorious ride. It was fun, So that I can remember she took Small Blessings to auction, and it lasted 2 days. And when it was over, I said, Kate, that it sold for what to me seemed an astonishing amount of money. And I said, Kate, do they know how old I am? And she said, I think so. It's all over the internet. So that's sort of my experience with, being a late blooming first time novel publisher.
And then your publisher sent you to one of the major book selling conventions prior
Yes.
to the book's release.
Yes.
And I remember you talking about, well, I mean, it was exciting, but also you had to learn how maybe to talk about your book in a way you hadn't
I've never got
before.
good at it. They sent St. Martin's was my publisher, and they sent a handler with me. I think he was the vice president. I mean, I was really impressive. And when people would come up, and say it was the big indie book mart, and buyers would come up and say, "What is your book about?" And I got pretty humble about it. I'd say, "Take it." Because I would, as you might guess, wander around a bit without really, and he had it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think for those who are curious about what the book is about, I think the most concise summary I saw is that Small Blessings is the story of a truly nice man who risks his comfort in the cause of happiness.
I like it.
Yeah, I think those are your words, in fact. So
Are you serious?
or maybe you stole that from someone else.
Yeah, who knows?
I find many authors of a certain age, or elderly authors, which you don't seem averse to that term, they don't like the pressure to market and promote, especially on social media. And we're friends on Facebook, and you are very active there. And you even engage in political discussions, which I think most people would run screaming from the room, but you don't. You manage this, and I think you enjoy it.
I do. I enjoy thoughtful conversation, and I have strict limits about no snark and no personal attacks.
Yes. So are those the rules that keep it manageable for you?
Yes.
Yep.
But I am absolutely, well, there again, it all goes back to, I think we're all stories on 2 feet. Mm. And I am so interested in the 2 feet in front of me, the story that's, on top of them.
Yeah, I mean, you seem willing to listen to anyone, give anyone a fair hearing.
Yeah. As long as they're not, mean.
Right, yes.
I have trouble with judgmentalness and, other things, but, anybody who's just talking, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move over to some of the questions that have come in as we've been chatting. An anonymous person is asking whether or not agents are interested in anyone over 40. And I can answer that. Of course, they're interested in people over 40.
Yes.
Let's see.
I would suggest that this fascination with youth, or this feeling that youth is where it's happening, is if you've read David Halverson's book about the 50s, one of the most interesting things in it was the power of television advertising. And I'm not sure that isn't where I have never felt ageism, never ever. And I am not sure that we don't take our image of what the world wants from advertising, and those people are trying to sell something. So stop it. Okay, I'm done.
Here's a question. Maybe you can dispense some elderly aunt or author wisdom. What advice do you have for those over 60 who are still waiting to hear from agents and publishers? Of course, the common refrain is it takes years for a novel to find a home. So do you have any advice on how to keep going?
I have how I do it, which is if I write somebody and I don't hear back for a reasonable length of time, well, there's two things. First of all, I always try to submit in a way that makes me a person, as well as just another submission, because editors and agents are on a treadmill, and a little blast of human connection, we'll all take that. And you can, I'm not saying being cutesy, I'm just saying daring to be a person, in your email, rather than reading what they expect and blindly following that. Mm-hmm. That works for me. Remember my husband and his beady little eyes. But I am not shy about sending a follow-up query. Yeah. Because I'm a colleague, not a supplicant. And if they don't want to deal with me, that's fine. I'm not going to take any offense. Yeah. It's a matter of landing an agent or an editor is a matter of having the right property in the right person on a day when they're susceptible. They haven't had a fight with their daughter or something. They just hate everything.
I think this hits on something that's really important and also intangible in a way, that there's so much fear from writers of every age of doing the wrong thing when they submit to an agent or editor. Oh my gosh, I can't follow up. What if I bother them? And the idea of being a supplicant, I think that's totally how most people feel going into this. But taking that risk to be human in a way that's charming, that's not annoying.
Yes, I am in and out. For example, going way back to NPR, when I wanted to land my interview with Jay Kernus, the god of public radio, and I was just this little. I worked in commercial radio, for heaven's sakes, and had done it for a very short time. And I would phone him up and have a very short, cheerful conversation. And he frankly couldn't, and I got off before he had time to wish I'd get off. And he, of course, did not see any real reason why he should give me an appointment, because he was extremely busy. Until we just happened to hit upon the fact that we both rock climbed. And that is when I got an appointment, because I was a person. And, that's the appointment where he told me to go away and come back and do what I was doing. but it is that, and there again, it is connection. It's about connections. It's not about landing a big fish. For me, it's always been about incrementally forming connections. So, and you know, whoever you meet, get their contact information and do not be shy about contacting them.
Here's a question I think you'll like. Early on, you mentioned storytelling by sound. Can you expand on that? I imagine that includes podcasting. What more might you say on
Yes.
that?
Well, but for me, my love of storytelling by sound, I think, goes back to I had a mother who read aloud to me, and she was an English professor, and she read everything aloud to me, even after I learned how to read, and that sound engaged my imagination so much, and that is what was fun, to actually inhabit this other world. For me, video is very passive. You know, it gives you all the information, and I like working in radio. Now, you're right. There are a million, not a million, but many, many different platforms and ways to reach people through sound. And but I think as somebody who likes to live in their imagination, that that is what the beauty of listening to stories and listening to experiences. Rather, they're more vivid to me. And I think the same thing about writing. The least vivid to me, the least, my goal is when I hear a story is to be able to walk around in that experience and sort of emotionally experience it myself. And in video, I'm a passive viewer. In sound, or when I'm reading, I'm experiencing. And I think as writers, that's what we offer. We offer the chance to expand readers' experiences in a really kind of magical way.
I'm going to go back to the age issue. And what I want to do, I want to read maybe 3, 4, or 5 questions in a row.
Right?
I think it will capture the sort of issue that people are worried about.
All right.
And we'll see what you have to say.
All right.
67 sounds young to me. I'm querying my first novel at 80. I'm healthy and active, but it seems to me like that might be a drawback. Next question. How about 79 years old? Someone else. At 74, I just keep writing, no problem. My concern is that agents and editors are looking for writers who can produce more than one good book, writers who will have a career, and they won't think I have time to do that. So I think you can hear the concern here. Yeah.
Well, what my experience is, you don't know until you ask, and it's a specific person you're querying with a specific project. And you know, as my agent said to me after she sold my book at auction, my age was out there. You know, I was way up in my 60s, and there is a certain, if you get the right, I think you have to show who you are in your interactions with agents and editors. The Ms. 80, who is healthy and active, dare I use the word spunky? You know, I'm assuming you're a brilliant and wonderful writer, because there is a bottom line that you have to be able to write. and you have to have a story to tell. And you know, the way I figure, I will assume that I do until somebody whom I respect tells me I don't. And but I am not going to let this hovering, you know, disapproval, you know, what miasma make me assume that I won't, that the chances are I don't.
Yeah.
I think the chances are I do. So I would, if I were doing it, I wouldn't hide anything. I would put in the subject of my email. First of all, there's a wonderful trick somebody told me once about getting the right agent, and that is looking at in the everybody thanks their agent. So look in the thank yous of a novel or a nonfiction piece that is the genre that you like, that speaks to you, and is in the genre in which you work. And you get specific names of specific agents and send them a query. You can borrow my line for, you know, frequent NPR freelancer, love major pettigrew's. That got a click. What you're after is a click. And Madam, Ms. 80-year-old, if I were it, I would say spunky, or whatever sort of light-hearted descriptive you want to use. 80-year-old loves whatever you know book you love, and because there's a certain marketability to being an 80-year-old who writes her first book. Don't forget the power of the boomer generation. You know, we still read. And if you are our age and you're writing, your writing is boomer experience on the page. And, you know, we like our clan.
Indeed. There was a couple questions that came up about how you have, you know, a very wonderful eclectic background. You had some accomplishments before the novel got published. How about those maybe who don't have that advantage? Maybe that they can't say NPR freelancer. They feel like they're starting with not much to build on.
I still you know that it's kind of a complicated question in a way, because I would want to know. That sounds like you are engaging in self-denigration. That, you know, my life sounds splashy because I'm a good storyteller, and what I'm wondering is, why are you engaging in comparative experience, you know, stuff? And stop it. You know, your life is your life. It's what got you to where you are to write this book. In terms of thinking of marketing yourself, you know, when you're pitching a story or hustling an agent, that's what you're doing. You're hustling an agent. And it is fun. It's not terrifying. And it's fun for the agent to be hustled. It's fun to have it be a game, you know, to be enjoyable. And agents and editors, can you imagine what it would be like to have so much power over so many people who have worked so hard on what they're, oh, please, you know, please take a look at my book. And, you know, if you get somebody who just wants an opinion and it's not going to make or break them, that's an interaction you'll take 9 times. And I take this from having been having people supplicate me. I'm drawn to people who you can just talk to. And yeah, I don't want power over somebody's whole being. So I would there again, if I were in those shoes and say I had grown up, gotten married, raised 3 kids, and turned to writing after my youngest went off to college, and I had either I'd been a teacher or something, I would put something. I would do the same thing, get an agent, look at agents who you resonate with, the people they represent, and say something in your email about I can't, in your slugline, I would do something like, I cannot think of anything special about myself to make you click on this email, but I'm hoping you will anyway, because I'm a very nice person, or some nonsense like that. But it is a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And but lives are different, and no life it prepares you to be a better writer than another life. You got something to say or you wouldn't be writing.
I think that's a lovely thought to end on. I just want to hold up your book again for those who for those who haven't seen it yet. Small blessings. I think I just want to echo something you said there at the end about about approaching it like a game. And when agents and editors don't feel like they're under pressure, like they're not the ones who are going to do the make it or break it with you, like it frees them up to actually be a little more themselves. They're not when they see that it's like they can engage with you as a person rather than a supplicant. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard for people to shift that mindset. But I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you today and have you to get your experience, because you're so entirely comfortable with yourself. It's you don't shy away from talking about the difficult things. You're able to speak about these things frankly without being mean or unkind. And I hope that people take away that essence. They're able to draw that from you and use it in their own.
You know what I'm getting to? I'm a famous zapper. I I am always zapping my friends, to get them to stop stuff. So I'm now going to send out a generalized zap to everyone to stop it with the self criticism and self doubt. Okay, and just cut loose. Life is short, to coin a phrase, and it's kind of day to day our decision about how much we enjoy it. So, okay, here we go. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Martha.
Oh, it was fun.
Really appreciate having you here, and it's good to see you. I haven't hoped to see you again before long.
Absolutely. Good luck, everybody.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.